Forget the Cold War you thought you knew. Right now, at the top of our world, a new high-stakes conflict is heating up faster than the planet itself. As ancient Arctic ice vanishes at record speed, it's unlocking trillions of dollars in oil, gas, and critical minerals. But this isn't just an economic boom, it's triggering an Arctic showdown. Russia is aggressively militarizing its vast northern border, deploying advanced weapons and challenging America's allies and interests. This is happening right on America's doorstep, posing direct threats to our national security, our economy, and the strategic balance of power. The evidence is undeniable. Decades of satellite data show the Arctic's frozen cap is in retreat. September sea ice, the summer minimum, now covers roughly half the area it did in the 1980s, shrinking by over 12% per decade. The last 18 years have seen the 18 lowest minimums ever recorded. But it's not just the area. The ice itself is fundamentally changing. The thick, resilient multi-year ice that survived many summers, has virtually disappeared. In 1985, it made up a third of the Arctic ice pack. By 2020, less than 5%. What remains is mostly thin, first-year ice, far more vulnerable to summer melt. Average ice thickness has plummeted. This isn't just an environmental story, it's a geopolitical earthquake. This melt is opening up strategic waterways like the Northern Sea Route along Russia's coast and the Northwest Passage through Canada. As exposing coastlines and, crucially, revealing access to potentially immense resources previously locked away. The Arctic is transforming from a frozen barrier into an accessible, dynamic maritime frontier, amplified by the dangerous ice-albedo feedback loop. Less ice means more dark ocean absorbing heat, leading to even faster melting. And no nation is moving more aggressively to dominate this new frontier than Russia. With fully half the Arctic coastline, and estimates suggesting the region holds 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and a massive 30% of its undiscovered gas, much of it within Russia's claimed zones, Moscow sees the Arctic as vital to its economic future and national power. Over the past decade, Russia has undertaken a massive military buildup. Dozens of old Soviet bases have been reopened and modernized, alongside new, state-of-the-art facilities. Bases like Nagurskoye on Alexandra Land, Russia's northernmost outpost, and facilities on Kotelny Island are being armed with advanced weapons. We're talking Bastion P anti-ship missiles, long-range S-400 air defense systems capable of threatening NATO aircraft, and even testing new hypersonic missiles and nuclear-powered underwater drones like Poseidon. This creates formidable anti-access/area denial bubbles, challenging the ability of the U.S. and its allies to operate freely. The heart of this military power is Russia's Northern Fleet, based on the heavily fortified Kola Peninsula. This is home to the majority of Russia's sea-based nuclear deterrent, its ballistic missile submarines. Protecting these assets is a key driver of the buildup. And underpinning Russia's control is its icebreaker fleet, the world's largest, and the only one with nuclear-powered vessels. Ships like the massive new Arktika class can smash through ice nearly 10 feet thick, ensuring Russia can navigate and control the Northern Sea Route. NSR year-round. Moscow treats the NSR not as an international waterway, but as its own national highway, imposing strict rules and hefty fees for passage, directly challenging the freedom of navigation critical to the U.S. and global commerce. Faced with this aggressive Russian posture and a rapidly changing environment, the United States is waking up to the Arctic challenge. The 2022 National Strategy for the Arctic region acknowledges the heightened competition and the climate crisis. It focuses on 4 pillars: security, deterring threats to the U.S. homeland and allies; climate change, building resilience and reducing emissions; sustainable economic development; improving livelihoods, especially for Alaska Native communities; and international cooperation, upholding a rules-based order. Alaska is America's Arctic anchor. Bases like Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson house critical commands, including the Alaskan NORAD region, responsible for aerospace warning. Eielson Air Force Base hosts squadrons of advanced F-35 stealth fighters, our front line against potential threats from the north. Modernizing NORAD, our Joint Defense Command with Canada, is a top priority. New Russian hypersonic and stealth cruise missiles demand upgraded radar and sensor systems to protect North America. But America faces a critical vulnerability. The icebreaker gap. The U.S. Coast Guard operates just one heavy polar icebreaker, the Polar Star, which is decades past its intended service life and requires costly upkeep. Our medium icebreaker, the Healy, is primarily for science. Compare this to Russia's fleet of over 40 icebreakers, including multiple nuclear-powered giants. Efforts to build new American heavy icebreakers, the Polar Security Cutters, are plagued by delays and cost overruns. The first ship, once hoped for in 2024, might not arrive until 2029 or later. This gap severely limits our ability to maintain presence, project power, conduct rescues, or even support science in icebound Arctic waters year-round. As one U.S. commander warned Congress, in the Arctic, we're severely outnumbered. This makes alliances crucial. The U.S. relies heavily on partners like Canada and Nordic nations. Joint exercises like Arctic Edge, ICEX, and NATO's Trident Juncture are vital for practicing cold weather operations and ensuring our forces can work together. Initiatives like the new Ice Pact with Canada and Finland aim to pool resources for future icebreaker construction, but closing the gap remains an urgent challenge. The opening Arctic waterways, like Russia's Northern Sea Route, NSR, and Canada's Northwest Passage, NWP, promise shorter shipping times between Asia, Europe, and North America, potentially cutting distances by 30 to 40% compared to the Suez or Panama canals. But for mainstream U.S. commerce, especially container shipping, the Arctic shortcut is largely a mirage for now. Why? Extreme costs and unreliability. Ships need expensive ice-strengthened hulls. Insurance premiums can be triple those of normal routes. Russia charges hundreds of thousands of dollars for mandatory icebreaker escorts along the NSR. The navigation season is still limited, and unpredictable ice can cause major delays. Plus, many Arctic passages are too shallow for the giant container ships that make global trade efficient. The cost per container via the Arctic could actually be double that of traditional routes. Russia, push, seems less about global commerce and more about controlling its own resource exports and strategic positioning. This control clashes directly with fundamental U.S. principles. The United States champions freedom of navigation worldwide, but Russia claims key straits along the NSR as internal waters, demanding prior permission for passage, especially for warships. A claim the U.S. rejects. This legal standoff is a constant source of friction, and the friction is becoming physical. Close encounters between military forces are dangerously common. Russian bombers and fighters frequently probe air defenses near Alaska, prompting intercepts by U.S. F-22S and F-35S. While often professional, some intercepts have been unsafe, with Russian jets flying perilously close to U.S. aircraft, risking catastrophic collision over the unforgiving Arctic. With communication channels frayed, the risk of miscalculation is dangerously high. Add to this unresolved boundary disputes, like the one between the U.S. and Canada in the Beaufort Sea, and overlapping claims to the extended continental shelf reaching towards the North Pole. As resources become more accessible, these disputes could easily ignite. The Arctic is no longer a distant frozen wasteland. It is a rapidly transforming region at the heart of 21st century geopolitics. Climate change is the accelerator, but the drivers are familiar: resources, strategic advantage, and great power competition. For the United States, the stakes couldn't be higher. Russia's military buildup and assertive claims directly challenge American security, economic interests, and the principle of freedom of the seas. The potential for conflict, whether through miscalculation during intercepts or disputes over resources and boundaries, is real and growing. Meeting this challenge requires a clear-eyed, sustained American commitment. We must urgently close the icebreaker gap to ensure year-round presence and access. We must continue modernizing NORAD to defend the homeland against new threats. We must strengthen our alliances with Arctic partners, sharing the burden and coordinating our strategies. And we must continue to invest in sustainable development for the American Arctic, particularly in Alaska, working closely with indigenous communities. The Arctic showdown is here. It demands our attention, our resources, and our resolve. The actions America takes now will determine whether the High North remains a region of peace and cooperation, or descends into a new theater of conflict with global consequences. The future of the Arctic and America's security hangs in the balance.